I've been reading comics for 39 years, and I just recently learned something about the comics industry that has just completely blown my mind. And it's that a lot of people who are fans of comics and have been reading comics for as long as myself, or in some cases even longer, have been buying comics incorrectly. You see, I discovered this when the whole power company situation happened at DC just a couple of years ago. Some of you may or may not remember that when the DC Power issue came out and there was all of this fanfare around celebrating black superheroes, that was all kind of seeming like it was pointing towards something. It was pointing towards a culmination of the return of DC's The Power Company. For those who are unfamiliar, DC's The Power Company was basically their version of the Heroes for Hire. It was a corporation run by one Josiah Power, and basically they kind of operated in a work-for-hire type of situation. Though it was actually a little bit deeper than that. It's a gross oversimplification. That's not really what I'm here to talk about. What I'm actually here to talk about, when that book came out and I felt a lot of people were talking about it. I was talking about it, and other people in my timeline and my social media algorithm, they were talking about it. And one thing that quickly became apparent to me is that people did not know how to support comics. And it became even more apparent to me just this year with the Dakota incident. When I talked about the Dakota incident, I saw so many people say, despite the fact I had been telling them to go pre-order that book, I saw so many people say they walked into their comic book shop and they were not able to pick up a copy of the Dakota incident because it was sold out. They're like, I didn't see any issues on shelves. I couldn't buy it. And you know what? That's crazy. It's crazy because I feel like we as comic book fans should know this by now. But I then discovered, no, people don't know this. So I want to demystify how buying comics works and how you can buy comics more effectively. Let's talk about it.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Okay, so I want to teach you how this works. How you can buy comics more effectively. Now, I've kind of briefly mentioned this in other videos, but I kind of want to really harp on it here, is that when you walk into a comic book shop, and I highly recommend that you do, go support your LCS. Take care of those people because they're taking care of you and keeping you in your hobby. So make sure to go show them some love. You don't just go into LCS and buy comics, maybe buy other things, that the LCS has to offer as well. I know a lot of LCSs sell Magic the Gathering cards and, other types of collectible trading card games. A lot of you delve into tabletop role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons. They probably have events and stuff on various days and on the weekends. Go support stuff like that because, the LCS is the cornerstone of this whole hobby. So I do highly recommend you do that. But I digress. When you walk into a comic book shop, let's say you walk in and you see a copy of Feral #1. Pay no attention to this part, the limited edition, some whatever out of 500. This is technically a ratio book. We're not here to talk about that yet. Maybe we'll talk about it on another episode. But let's just say, for argument's sake, you see a copy of Feral #1 sitting on the shelf. Okay, so you decide, this book looks interesting. I want to pick this up. By the way, shout out to Gavin Guidry, who's a friend of the channel and the current artist on both JSA and The Flash over at DC Comics. He's always in the Blerd Cave and Nerds of Culture live streams on both Saturdays and Thursdays, usually in there tripping with us while he's working on art for those respective books. Shout out to him. He's family. We love him to death. But yes, let's say you walk into a shop, you buy this book, you see it on the shelf, you're like, I want this. This looks cool. This looks interesting. You maybe you thumb through a couple of pages and find out, oh, this is an interesting book about a zombie apocalypse from the perspective of a cat. And then what ends up happening, you purchase this book now, okay? You purchase the book, you sat it on the counter, you've given money over to the person who's behind the counter. What did you just do? Do you think you either A, supported the shop, B, supported the creative team of the comic, or C, do you think you supported both? I'll wait. Let's see what y'all say. Let's see what y'all say. We'll put 10 seconds on the clock. How about that? All right, pencils down. If you said B, the creative team, you would be incorrect. If you said C, both, you would still be incorrect. If your answer was A, for supporting the shop, you are correct. Both B and C are incredibly wrong. And now, I'm not saying that you bought the book, you walked in, bought it right off the shelf. Yeah, technically you are supporting the creative team because you're buying the work that they put out, and you'll probably go talk about it. Maybe you'll talk about it to your friends, maybe go talk about it on Reddit or some other social media platform. Sure, but the thing is, from a financial perspective, you only supported the shop, and I'm gonna tell you why. The reason why is because every comic that you see on a shelf in a LCS, that book has already been paid for. The shop bought it. Whenever books are coming out, what they do is whoever is the shop owner or the person who does the ordering for the shop, which is usually the shop owner, but is not always, but whoever is doing the ordering, they are going through and they are picking out the books that they think are going to sell. They look at a book and say, oh, this is a X-Men #1. It's a #1 issue, so it's probably going to sell. We'll go ahead and get a bunch of those. And then they'll say, oh, well, hey, here's Batman. Here's a Batman number 750, whatever the fuck. They're going to go, okay, yeah, Batman sells like gangbusters. We're going to get plenty of Batman. Superman sells like gangbusters. We're gonna get plenty of Superman. Then they're gonna go and take a look at a book like, say, a Feral or a Bitterroot or a Department of Truth or a Dakota Incident. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna say, we don't really move stuff like this, but maybe we'll get like a few. Maybe we'll get a few copies just to see what happens, whatever. It depends on the situation. And with that being taken in mind, the book comes in, they put it on the shelf, you come and buy it. All you're really doing is taking the money that the shop spent to get that book. You are basically helping them recoup their money on that. The books, once they hit the shop, they have already been paid for. Now, I know what you're probably sitting here thinking now. You're thinking, well, wait a minute. If the shop pays for the book, and then I pay the shop for the book, so the shop gets taken care of. Well, wait a minute. That means that the creative team's already been taken care of. And I would tell you, sort of. You're technically right, but you're also not at the same time. This is why I am often a huge proponent of pre-orders. Now, pre-orders work a very specific way. Pre-orders, basically what we're talking about here is if you ever go into a shop and they're talking about, hey, you want to put this in your pull box, or hey, I want to add something to my pull list. I want to subscribe to a book. That is basically just a few other ways to say that you are pre-ordering a book. Pre-ordering a book is basically a way for shops to know how many issues of something to order or whether to order something at all. And we also got to take into account, and not your mileage with this is probably going to vary, but there used to be like minimum order numbers and things like that for a lot of books. Some people do it, some people don't. I don't really have the data to back up how many books do it now versus then, but under normal circumstances, some books do have like, hey, you got to order this many. You got to order this many to get this. You got to order that many to get that, or whatever. Now, when you're pre-ordering a book, what that does is it helps you, as we go back and revisit when I gave you those three options, I said, hey, when you buy a book off the shelf, are you supporting the shop? Are you supporting the creative team? Or are you supporting both? Well, if you pre-order a book, this allows you to select option C, which is for both.
Both? Both is good.
See, the issue here is that when you pre-order a book, and preferably before FOC, because that's another thing you got to remember. A lot of people don't know about FOC, I've discovered. FOC is final order cutoff. What FOC does is when a shop is ordering a book, if they order it before FOC, and FOC is usually anywhere between 3 to sometimes, depending on what it is, 4 weeks ahead of the release of the title. When a shop pre-orders a book and they get those orders in before FOC, this tells the publisher, whether it's Marvel, DC, Image, Dynamite, Boom, Dark Horse, Valiant, Ignition, Mad Cave, Oni, whatever, you get the idea. It tells them how many books to print. So basically, if a shop gets, let's say 50 orders, we're just making up a number here. So let's say a shop gets 50 orders for Feral. Okay, cool. That means the shop is going to order 50 issues. They might order a little bit more than that, depending. Like sometimes they might order like, okay, well, we got this many pre-orders here. Let's order a couple of extra. Let's order a few extra or whatever, so that we can have something to put on the shelves, not just have 50 Feral copies just in pull boxes. They'll get extras to put on the shelf depending on how many people are actually ordering it. I saw this happen with books like Bitterroot: The Next Movement, where I think when I walked in my shop the first time, I don't even think they had issue 1. It just was not there. It was not happening. It was not a thing. That happens sometimes. That happens sometimes. Mr. Terrific Year 1, I think there was a couple of issues on the shelf, maybe, but it was one of those things that the more people started pre-ordering those books, the more I started seeing them on the shelf. Getting away from FOC, because I feel like we've got a good explainer for what that is. Now we're talking about the pre-orders of it. When you pre-order that title, I pre-order Feral, it's on my pull list. That means when the book comes in the shop and when I go pick up that book, when it releases, when I purchase that title, not only have I supported the shop because they bought the book, I'm supporting the creative team because what that does, what the pre-order does, it doesn't just guarantee me my copy. It also tells the publisher, hey, people are buying this book. I want y'all to understand something. Marvel and DC especially, but all publishers, whenever you pre-order a title, it doesn't just tell the publisher how many to make, it also tells them ahead of time what they can plan for. You see, when you ever hear about titles like, I think one of the most recent ones was Imperial Guardians, that was a Marvel title that got canceled before it even came out, and it was because people weren't pre-ordering the title. When you pre-order a book, what that does is it tells the publisher, wait a minute, people are vibing with this. And if enough people are vibing with something early, and especially if they're vibing with it early and often and continue to vibe with it even after issue 1, because that's also another thing. Pre-orders for issue 1s, they're always high. Number 1 issues are always high pre-order, and then the second issue after usually is half of that, and then usually the third issue is half of that, and then so on and so on and so on and so on. There are some rare instances where that's not the case, but depending on how popular or hot the series is, it could go either way, if I'm being honest. But yes, when a publisher sees that people are pre-ordering the hell out of a book, like case in point, Ben 10 over at Dynamite is doing gangbusters on pre-orders right now. So I think it's safe to say Ben 10 is going to get a nice long runway when it comes to how long that book is going to go, which means that could mean anywhere from this book being something that was guaranteed at least 5 to 10 issues to meaning it could potentially be a book that goes on until well into the next 2 or 3 years. I saw this personally happen with Thundercats, because Thundercats, when that first issue came out, it was hot. Everybody was fucking I don't say everybody, but you get the idea when I'm being hyperbolic when I say everybody was fucking pre-ordering that book. Well, that encouraged Dynamite to make more, like to the point where and I literally had Declan Shalvey, the writer of Thundercats, say as much, that he was given a runway on that book. He was given at least a year's worth of Thundercats, and because the book continued to do well because of pre-orders, not just sales in the shop, but because of pre-orders, they greenlit the Thundercats series to the point where it just finished its 25th issue and has had a spin-off, 2, 3 actually, technically, because you got a Thundercats Chitara miniseries. There was a Thundercats Panthro one-shot and a Thundercats Pumir one-shot, and then there was also Thundercats Lost, which was an entire, I think Thundercats Lost ran for at least 10 issues, and it inspired Dynamite to release a Silverhawk series, which ran for 10 issues, and they are now doing a Thundercats Silverhawks crossover series that is going to run for 15 issues, spanning across a Thundercats Silverhawks standalone book. Well, not standalone, because it's all part of the whole thing. But you get what I'm saying? Like, there's a Thundercats Silverhawks book, there's a Mum-Ra book, and a Thunderhawks book. And all three of those books are part of the same thing, if you get where I'm coming from. Anyway, I say all that to say pre-orders matter. And I also, if you think, oh, well, that's just Dynamite, then not everybody does that shit. Wrong. Look at the Poison Ivy series over at DC Comics. That book was only supposed to run for 12 issues. And here we are, like 6 or 7 trades later and almost at issue 50. Why is that book still running? Because of pre-orders. People are pre-ordering the series. They're keeping the pre-orders on the series. They're pre-ordering the trades. They're doing all the right things to keep that book afloat. And the reality is, in this day and age, in this economy, no book makes it to 50 issues. Hell, no book makes it to 25 issues. And you know what? I'll do you one better. No book makes it past 10 issues most times without people pre-ordering the hell out of that book. There's a reason why publishers like Marvel are more interested in 5-issue minis here, 5-issue minis there, why DC typically doesn't let too many things go past issue 10 if they're not selling particularly well. And in the case of both Marvel and DC, sometimes some books don't even make it past issue 1, 2, 4, 5, sometimes even 8 because of poor sales. And it's not, once again, it's not just sales at the cash register, not just picking the book up off the shelf like going, ooh, this looks interesting, let me take this. No, it's people pre-ordering the book. That gives the publisher so much information. And you know, I know some people think, oh, well, why should I have to pre-order a book? I don't even know what the fuck I'm reading. Here's the thing. I think we have, not everybody, but I feel like if you've been reading comics for any length of time, a lot of times you can usually look at a book and tell whether or not, I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but I honestly think that saying only really applies to people. I don't think it really applies to books anymore when you're talking about comic books, because that's a visual medium. You can look at that, you can kind of tell right away whether or not something is going to be your jam or not. There's very rare instances where I was like, oh wow, that's actually better than I thought it was going to be. But no, when you see a comic, you have a good idea. You're like, oh, hey, I know this writer. I know this writer usually does good stuff. So yeah, let me check that out. Hey, I know this artist usually does good stuff. Let me check that out. You kind of have a lot of descriptors and things, you know, with solicits. Especially when you think about solicits, you can literally see previews of books and see like what the fuck is going on with the book. So yeah, it's a lot easier for you to be able to see something and be like, you know what? I want to check that out. Not to mention you have content creators like myself and others who you sometimes talk about books or you talk about previews for books, and you can go, oh, you know what? I actually saw this interview with said creator, or I saw this video where creator was talking about. I was on Instagram or somewhere, or Reddit or whatever. Somebody was talking about the book. You have so many different ways to now kind of have a better idea of whether or not a book is going to be worth your time. And, you can make that choice from there. And not to mention, you can always say, if you are pre-ordering a book, you can always say if the book no longer interests you, take it off my pull list. Though I do recommend maybe consider replacing it with something else, which is what I do. It's the thing. And also something else I think people need to understand too about pre-orders is I don't know, man. Some people's shops are weird, and I've been told this before, but I have never encountered this personally. But like with my shop, you don't pay until you come in and buy the book, like when the book actually shows up. So, I mean, if you want to support a creative team, here is what I would tell you to do. I would say take the books that you really like and put them on your pull list. So my pull list this week was G.I. Joe, Ghost Pepper, Narco. I had Mum-Ra the Ever Living, Radiant Black, and Storm, Earth's Mightiest Mutant. That was what was on my pull list this week. Those are books that I genuinely care about. These are also typically books I know don't get bought quite as often as others. Like, look, I'm gonna keep it a whole trade paperback with you. I don't typically put books like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, X-Men, unless it's like a spin-off book, I don't put those books in my pull list, and I'm gonna tell you why. And I think some people do this and don't realize it. You want to know why those books always sell really well? It's because people tend to put those books in their pre-order list because they think that, oh, I need to make sure I get this book. People oftentimes use their pull list incorrectly. Like, people usually put shit in their pull list that everybody's fucking buying that will always be on the fucking shelf that is in no danger of getting canceled. I prefer, personally, to use my pull list with great responsibility. Like, I'm on some Uncle Ben shit. With great power comes great responsibility. With a great pull box comes great responsibility, if you want to look at it that way. I look at it as, wait a minute, this is a title that not a lot of other people are buying. I want to put this on my pre-order list. I want to put this on my pull, so that way I support that book and I support this shop. And maybe if I put this on my pull list and I talk to other people about this book, maybe they'll put it on their pull list if I can encourage them to do so. And the more people we can get buying this book, we can be like, oh, hey, this book's gonna be awesome, it's gonna be great, and it's gonna keep coming out, and we're gonna keep getting more. It was the same thing I said when there was not too terribly long ago when former X-Men writer Kieran Gillen was writing the Power Fantasy, and he made a comment in the back of one of his issues of the Power Fantasy, basically talking about how the book was selling good, but it was kind of iffy as to whether or not it was gonna sell well enough that the Power Fantasy would either end at issue 16 or it would end maybe like at issue 30 or 40 something. Like, that was like a way it was kind of worded. And while he did later come back and say he didn't mean that the book was like going to be canceled, he just meant that the sales were not as good as they could have been. The reality is that a part of that is the pre-order. So that's why I always tell people, if you see this plucky little indie title, this plucky creator-owned title that you're always like going off about, if that book is not in your pull list, you're doing that book a disservice. So yes, that's why a lot of the times I don't really put a whole heap of a lot of major publishers' books in my pull list unless they're books that I know aren't particularly safe. Not because the book is bad or because the book isn't good or whatever the case. It's because I know that readers may not be as quick to put it in the pull list, either because they don't know about the book or they don't know how pre-orders work. So that's why I'm making this video, to talk about that. All of this is an aid of saying that if you have a comic that you love, that you want to support, that you want to make sure more of those books are made, make sure to add them to your pull list. Anyway, that's all I really had to say about it. Let me know what's on y'all's pull list. Put it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube stuff. Subscribe, notification bell, like, share, hype button. You know the stuff by now. Come on. Anyway, do all that stuff, and we'll catch y'all next time. We're out of here. Peace out.